welcome back to Kapella Industries Insight Podcast. And today we again have a special guest, Jerry Anderson. He is back for a second time. I guess we didn't scare him off the first time, so we have him back again, and we are actually going to be switching a little bit as far as what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be diving into things a little bit deeper. Last time when Jerry was on, we talked about the low-income housing, and we really just scratched the surface as far as how we can solve the low-income housing shortages. And we're going to actually dive in just a little bit deeper. But before we do that, for any new listeners out there that maybe have not heard Jerry before, I just want to ask you to just share a little bit about your background, what you specialize in, how long you've been doing it.
Very good. Well, thank you for having me, number one. I currently have my own business. It's a federal consulting group, and we do consulting with affordable housing primarily for government agencies on a national level. In addition to that, my prior experience, good heavens, it goes clear back to the RTC in the 1990s, working with the savings and loan debacle that was going on at that time and taking in properties. And I actually was introduced to affordable housing at that point in time. After that, I did do consulting with the federal government, primarily with HUD, through a group that I worked with, dealing again with Section 8 contracts and affordable housing. And after that, I actually went to work for HUD in Washington, where I was the Associate Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Affordable Housing Preservation. So after my stint there of 7 years in Washington, which I thoroughly enjoyed, that's when we formed a federal consulting group to continue the process of trying to maintain and enhance affordable housing across the nation.
Wow. Thank you for that. Now, why don't we just go ahead and dive right into it, okay?
Perfect.
So my first question to you is, I want to talk about what's in our backyard. Let's just start there. We're here in Colorado, right? So let's talk about obviously the affordable housing. It's to my knowledge that there is, as far as the latest numbers, there's over 121,000 units in the state of Colorado as far as shortages go. And so my question to you is, why is this, and are there any programs at a state or a local level available to assist with development of low-income housing?
Yes, well, the number is fairly accurate, actually, at 121,000 units. And I want to emphasize the name units. It's not people. Right. It's units that we need for families, for elderly. All of those fit into that category. These are people that are 50% of the area median income. In Denver, the area median income is about $117,000 a year.
Wow.
So even 50% of that starts making it impossible for some of these people to go to what I'll call conventional or market rate properties to live or purchase a home, because of the price that we're confronted with in the state of Colorado. We're fortunate, believe it or not, that it's only 121,000. Nationwide, you know, that number creeps up to between 7 and 10 million.
Wow.
So think of the city, New York City, where you have 8 million people.
Yeah. That's
how nationwide, that's the lack of affordable units that we have. In Colorado, we have been blessed with the fact that we have agencies that are very forthcoming and very active in the affordable housing arena. Okay. The state has the Division of Housing, which is set up, and they're very active in helping to provide funding for private sector or nonprofits to build affordable housing, and they try and make it available as much as possible, as much as the budget will withstand.
Right.
We also have our local housing agencies that that's their job, is to provide safe, decent, affordable housing for communities. So with all of that, why do we have 121,000? Well, the problem still is finding that financing, getting the people into that financing, and then the majority of the people that need affordable housing in the state of Colorado are actually in the 30% of AMI level. So they're really low, 35,000 or less a year of income.
Man.
And for those people to get into affordable housing, we really need to subsidize properties. We need to help subsidize those rents for those people. And that's where we're lacking. With programs available to facilitate that. Some come out, but they're very minimal. And if they do come out, it's hard to sustain them over years. So the subsidy programs just aren't available. HUD has the Section 8 program and the Section 8 voucher program, which is a subsidy program, but again, we're very limited on the numbers that come into the state of Colorado. But with those numbers that do come in, our government and our agencies do a wonderful job of administering and trying to get those out to our people as quickly as possible. So it sounds bad, but I work in a lot of other states where the affordable housing deficiency is just horrendous, and it's hard to get over. The other problem we have too is if we do have affordable housing out there, maintaining that affordable housing becomes problematic. We do have, fortunately, very active low-income housing tax credit programs in the state, which are administered by Colorado Housing Finance Agency, which does a wonderful job of that. That provides not only the building of new properties for affordable purposes, but the rehab of existing properties. And that's a big plus for us.
How often, and a little side note here, but how often do you should we, or do we, I guess, try to get in there and kind of keep them livable and upgrading them and things of that nature as rehabs go?
Yeah, normally on the properties that we work with under the, let's say a new property under low-income housing, there's actually a 20-year schedule of capital needs that's presented at the time. And they're supposed to be setting aside funding on an annual basis for going into what we call a replacement reserve account to facilitate those needs as they come due. You may have refrigerators due in year 10, and you want to make sure you have the money in year 10 to facilitate that. Unfortunately, they don't keep up with that replacement reserve on an annual basis. And so what happens is we end up with deficiencies, and so the properties start going downhill. Public housing in the state of Colorado, there's a difference between subsidized and public housing. Public housing is subsidized, but it is subsidized not through Section 8. The housing agencies are just given an operating subsidy every year and a capital grant to help with the improvements that are to be made to properties. That's dictated through Congress and the national budget. There's never enough money there. And so in Colorado we're faced with that as well. And so we work on a program currently through HUD, and a lot of the properties in the state of Colorado that were public housing have converted over to what we call the Section 8 subsidy, and it's mandatory that they make those deposits on an annual basis. So it is helping. It is helping, and so from a local standpoint, I know a lot of our housing authorities in the state of Colorado are taking advantage of the rental assistance demonstration program for that purpose.
Wow. Now what about on a national level? Are there programs on a national level encouraging developers to invest in low-income housing?
every administration comes out with an affordable housing budget every year. You know, it's one of those nice things that you want to say that we're out there, we're going to take care of affordable housing.
Right.
It's a budgetary process, to be quite honest with you, and it's one where they may put the money out, but they're really dependent on the states to take advantage of those budgets to do that. Obviously, the biggest program that the government provides for us is the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. And that then is given out to each state based on population. So some states get more from a tax credit standpoint than others, and then we have bonds that you have to do with 4% credits as well, and there's always a cap on those. So we're constrained a little bit by that. I would say that from a national level, there's a lot of groups in Washington, interest groups, that have been pushing for a greater number to increase that cap for the low-income housing tax credits for the states, so that we get more dollars per person in the state. And that seems to be getting some action, which is good. So we're seeing some activity along the low-income housing tax credit, and again, that's used not only to build new, but to renovate existing. And so that's a big plus for us as well, that goes on. But that's the biggest program.
And has that kind of been increasingly getting a little better?
It's getting more and more action, yes. And we're seeing more activity there, and I happen to know the two gentlemen that work very hard in Congress to facilitate that. They're excellent at what they do, very knowledgeable, and full of numbers. So very pleased to know them, number one, but very pleased to have them as advocates for the low-income housing tax credit program as well.
Really trying to make it happen. And that's what we need. We need people that actually are saying they're going to do it, and then they're actually pushing to do it.
Pushing to do it. And a lot of groups out there like National East Housing, NCSHA, these are groups that focus primarily on affordable housing. And they have a lot of memberships across the country. They're national organizations, and they do a very wonderful job of advocacy in Congress as well. So.
Well, that's good to know, and it's good to know that we have somebody like you here willing to speak with us that that has this knowledge, who knows what's happening, you know, on the other side of things, and that things are progressing. Now, kind of to transition a little bit, is there any pushback from communities, government, and builders preventing the development of affordable housing?
I think probably one of the biggest pushbacks is from communities. It's called NIMBY. Not in my backyard. And NIMBYism has been around forever. And of course, when you say affordable housing, people get a negative context that this is going to bring nothing more than drugs or crime into my area. And it's just not the case. Right now, from a federal level, if I wanted to use federal funding to build a new property for affordable purposes, I have to go through what's called fair housing. Fair housing now has a rule that says if you're going to build, you cannot build in an area that has more than 50% minority or more than 30% poverty. So if you're looking at an area that has more than 50% minority, they will not allow you the funding to go there. What they're trying to do is push this funding and push these units back into neighborhoods where the residents of affordable housing can take advantage of what the other neighborhood is realizing at the same time. I call it, we're lifting them up. If you put them all into a group, into one area of town, that has nothing but crime and drugs, what are you going to end up with?
Yep.
And so they're trying to pull this away.
Wow.
It has created some issues, obviously, you can imagine. And so if we're wanting to build into one of those areas,
Right.
We do get NIMBYism, not in my backyard. But that's becoming more and more, I think, we're deterring that some by showing the type of housing that we're being able to build and create, and then the other programs to help educate our residents that go into those,
Right.
and make them more secure properties as well. So.
Okay, now I guess one of my questions is, they said, not in my backyard, right? They think it's going to bring down the value of the area, but we want to give people an opportunity to rise up. And so maybe statistically or from your experience, do you feel that developing in these areas where people can have a better chance at kind of coming up and changing things, do you feel that a lot of people do take advantage of that and they actually are able to kind of reestablish themselves and get different opportunities?
I think this is so new, I can't really give you a good answer on that, except to say I do know that we have built in some of these areas and moved and done new construction in these areas. And in one in Georgia, a small town in Georgia called Villa Rica.
Okay.
We did this exactly. We took affordable housing, we tore down, and we built new, and the surrounding area did not fit those parameters of 50% minority or 30% poverty.
Right.
It was a better area. And we've had success there with with not only the communities getting involved with us in helping, but also with our residents in our affordable housing units. I think it's just created a better lifestyle for them. And so I feel pretty positive about it. That's not to say some areas still may have that influx of some crime, but the crime we've noticed in affordable housing actually comes from outside in, not from inside out, which means it's not the residents, it's affiliates of the residents that are creating the problem. And so I'm a big proponent of secured properties where you have to have a key card to get in and so on and so. That has helped a great deal as well. That's only one little aspect, by the way. It's a much bigger environment that we deal with there, but it is something that I think we are lifting people up.
I love that, because to me it's exactly what it's about. It's about giving people a different opportunity, helping people. You just get the opportunity to choose whether you want to rise up and have more and do more. And so I love that perspective and kind of some insight that you are doing it, and it is succeeding. Now you can't control everything, right? But there's some success in that. So now, do you think that the rising cost of housing could push affordable housing out of reach for a large portion of people? And if so, how do we deal with this?
Well, we've experienced this in Colorado for the last couple of years, where we've had just housing costs going through the roof. And now with the current interest rate environment, when the housing costs were going up, but we had 2% rates for mortgages, there was a nice offset there. But now we're seeing some rise with rates to where rates are, tearing up towards the 7% level. And it just absolutely is diminishing the opportunity for people to get into home ownership. And normally what happens when all of that goes up is the cost of rentals go up as well. So to have people in rental housing, they may be okay now, but when their contract is up, more than likely those rents are going to go up. That is problematic.
Do you see it shifting as far as interest rates, and what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think we're going to see a shift in rates. I think what we're going to have to do is make more opportunities for those people in those lower levels to enhance their income levels to where they can rise up to the levels of the economy in the particular state. And that's tough because we have a lot of people that are on unemployment.
Yep.
We have a lot of people that are on welfare. And we have a lot of people that are on just Social Security. Our elderlies in particular are on Social Security. That creates a situation where we're dependent on national or local governments to enhance those, and it's a always trailing to where there's a gap in there where our residents are, and people that are in those categories are going to suffer.
Yeah.
And so we're I think trying to do more to get that enhanced as well.
Okay. Now, how else are we dealing with it? Is there anything else that you can add to that?
Well, I think with the current election coming up here in 5 days,
right.
At least in the state of Colorado, we do have this Proposition 123 that deals with affordable housing.
Okay.
It does assist with rental assistance.
Okay.
So if we have people that are caught in that gap where they're just really having difficulties, they can apply and potentially get a subsidy to help them out.
Okay.
They're also looking at a subsidy program where they can help subsidize some of those rents for people in the 30% of AMI level or less.
Okay.
Also for home ownership, one of the big issues with purchasing a home when you're in those categories is coming up with a down payment. You might be able to make the payment, but that down payment, and so part of the Proposition 123 is for down payment assistance as well.
Okay.
Now, that's the good news. The bad news is there's red tape that goes along with that, and so people have to understand what's involved in getting there, and I think we need to educate those people that we need to focus on that could apply and assist them in applying for that assistance, whether it be down payment assistance, the subsidy assistance, or whatever. And we need a good program to do that. I think part of the funding for Proposition 123 is for education.
Okay.
But again, I think Proposition 123, the total amount is probably around $4 million.
Okay.
Or 400 million.
Okay, I was like,
400 million. So if we wanted to build new units,
right,
and if the units were, say, 200,000 a unit to build, how many do you think we can build with 400 million?
Yeah.
It's just barely touches the 121,000 units that we're looking at. I think it's probably somewhere around 20,000 units, which we're not going to shirk at. We're happy to have it, because without it, those units, the money simply wouldn't be available.
Right.
And not all of it goes for new construction.
Okay.
You know that rental assistance is going to take part of it, down payment assistance is going to take part of it, and then new construction. But I am very pleased to see all of those categories being addressed and not just pigeonholed into one area. We are trying to address several areas of concern in the state of Colorado.
Right.
I also want to bring out that the 121,000 units does not include homeless. So that's a total another category that's outside of the 121,000 units.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I didn't know that. What is the rate of homelessness, at least in Colorado?
I'm not sure what the rate is. I just know it's problematic and it's tough to get your arms around.
Right.
We have in Colorado a group called Coalition for the Homeless that works very closely with the state, and they do a very good job of ensuring that our homeless are at least trying to be taken care of.
Right.
Part of the problem with some of the homeless is they're really pretty satisfied with where they are.
Yep.
I did see on the news this morning where Aurora has housing available for homeless, that they're trying to get the homeless to move into and they've got they've built like mini homes for the homeless to move into, which I think is going to help that process a great deal.
Okay.
But
I didn't know they had that in Aurora.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
That has just started up there, and Aurora has had a substantial homeless problem.
Yep.
I think Denver has a substantial homeless problem. It's tough to deal with.
Right.
But on the other hand, I do think that if we can provide them a safe shelter with heat and decent bathing and
or essentials and things like
then I think we've made some giant strides towards helping with that problem.
Yep.
So
I agree with that 100%. And I love that we're doing that in our backyard.
Yes.
Now, do you think that this is the right way to deal with affordable housing in Colorado, or is there a better solution or a better way to do it?
I think Colorado is very well focused, I think, towards affordable housing. I think they try and institute programs to facilitate our affordable housing problem. At the end of the day, if we had funding, we could probably solve it, but funding is always the issue. The increase in low-income housing tax credit allocations for the state would be wonderful. Other programs like Proposition 123, where the state actually puts funding in, all of these together help the situation. We just have to keep pushing towards those areas and maybe come up with even more unique ideas to help solve the problem. But we need to solve the problem, because along with this, if we can solve the affordable housing problem, we also, I think, take care of some of the crime.
Yep.
And I think we take care of some of the drugs. Not all, some I say, but I think it enhances those and helps us in those areas as well.
It's just about moving the needle forward.
That's all we're trying to do.
You know? Is there any other, any other tips or advice that you would give to our listeners about, for instance, Proposition 123, that's coming up, and anything else that might be coming up that we can keep our eyes on or look towards? Or
I think the biggest thing is to be aware. I think too many people say affordable housing and they really don't understand what affordable housing is and where these 121,000 units are needed and why. And so I think to get involved a little bit with that, you don't have to jump in head first, but I think to be more aware of the issues that surround affordable housing and what that need and desire is, I think would help a great deal, because that means now we're having more public involvement in the affordable housing arena, and I would love to see that. I think we have some wonderful agencies that do terrific jobs, but I think we need that public support as well to enhance the abilities towards affordable housing. The knowledge is really something. I've obviously dealt with it for 40 years. So I feel very strongly about our preservation of affordable housing and trying to enhance that and enhance people's lives going forward.
Well, I think that's going to take care of a lot of issues that we see, especially in our backyard, and we all want, at the end of the day, I feel like everybody wants a comfortable lifestyle. Everybody wants to be happy and kind of find where they want to be, and I think if we all come together, and like you said, we're a little bit more aware and educated on these issues and say, okay, how can we come together and take some action in a positive way? So, well, Jerry, that's all I had for you, but I really, really appreciate you coming on here again, and thank you again just for everything that you went over. We appreciate your time.
It's been my pleasure, and I appreciate it, because my last comments about making people aware, I think this will help make them aware and maybe You know, we have the internet, we have all of these facilities available to us to become educated a little bit in this regard, and I'd take advantage of it.
It's a click away.
It's a click away.
It's a click away.
Perfect. But thank you for having me on as well. I appreciate it.
Thank you.